Welcome everybody, I guess. This is a bit weird because I'm just talking to a cam and I wish I was talking to an audience. But welcome to this virtual little fireside chat about the visual development of Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout. I'm here with Dan and Ash, who are both principal artists in Fall Guys. Hey guys.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Fall Guys. I just want to give a quick introduction because I want to let the artists speak. Those are like the real heroes. Basically, Fall Guys is Mediatonic's very big own IP at this moment. It's a game about collective mayhem and just reenacting a game show in a wider sense. And you're playing with 60 players at the same time. So it's a wonderful chaos all the time. And we invested a lot of time in creating a world that's, and I picked this up the other day, it's Playground Mom approved. So you can see a lot of like, I don't know, I would say funny accidents happen, but at no point in time you will see any gore or any hardcore accidents. And I just want to dive in a bit and actually let the artist speak what the thinking behind all this was. But maybe just to kick off, all good games, all good art direction start with a Pinterest board. When we came up with the idea of Fall Guys, of course, we wanted it to be very visceral in a sense. We wanted the players and everybody to just feel the colors in the widest sense. That's actually one of my favorite references. A lot you see in the world has this vinyl touch, and everything has this really bright colors. And speaking of colors, we didn't just pick random colors or just having all the primary colors at the same time. When we came up with the color system, we tried to make them as delicious as possible. That's why a lot of the colors we have in the game have actual food names. It's like vanilla and chocolate chip and strawberry red. And this is all on purpose. Basically, we want you guys to be eating the game. And in the best sense possible. And although the game might look very simple on the surface, it's actually quite sophisticated. Of course, Big N has been a major inspiration for us. They also just nail this very simplistic look. But if you look a bit deeper, you can also actually see that every asset in the game is meticulously handcrafted and just fits the world. And that's what we're actually trying to do with Fall Guys as well. It looks simple on the surface, but again, every item, every trap, every building block of the level goes through a lot of QA, a lot of eyes, and a lot of artist hands go over that before it actually makes it into the game. But I actually don't want to talk too much. I want to maybe give one of the artists a bit of a chance to talk about it. And I guess my first victim is going to be you, Dan.
Hey, what's up?
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you.
So you are one of the character wizards.
Yeah, that's right. Principal concept artist on Fall Guys. Been working on it since around 2018. So what we're looking at here is the kind of initial exploration of the characters, just really blocking out the proportions, and it's very much driven by the initial design pitch document. So you'll notice at the top of the characters, they have quite a flat head, and early on we're thinking, maybe they'd actually be able to stack up on top of each other. But yeah, that just turned out to be pretty crazy with all the server network stuff going on. Yeah, and in this next image here, you can see quite early on, we just were playing around with the humor of the game, right? We knew that was going to be a big part of it. A lot of us kind of grew up watching Takeshi's Castle, and so we wanted to capture the spirit from that. And we loved how the contestants would always dress up in these really fun kind of mascot costumes. So we tried to convey that, and this image you can see here is a vinyl toy designed by our UI artist Adam Walker, which ended up playing a pivotal role in kind of influencing the general shape of the Fall Guy. We knew we were going to have a lot of these on screen at one time, so the design had to be really simple. So just a lot of it was about subtraction rather than trying to add too much detail. And we started out in 3D early on so that we could quickly drop the model into Miximo, just to give us a really rough animation, which would inform. It would just help us make the decisions quicker, basically, rather than spending ages doing 50 different versions. The pitch was knocked out in about a week, so we just had to move fast. And here's an exploration of some early character customization. So you can see it's still an early version of the Fall Guy. So the prototype changed quite a bit, but the general idea was there with the shapes. And some stuff here still made it into the end. Like you can see the heart pants there and the crown, which is cool because when you're working on the projects early on, you're never sure what's going to actually make it to the finish line, just because so much stuff is just exploration of ideas. You end up with kind of cherry picking maybe 10% of the work that actually gets done. And here, this was just more of an exercise, right? Because from early on, we kind of knew in our hearts that we just needed to refine what we had already established. But just to really confirm that, we explored a few different shapes anyway, and none of them resonated with us. So it was just a way to clarify that. And then this is a collaboration sketch with one of our lead artists in the studio, Amy. And yeah, like you could see here, we're not a million miles away from where we ended up. We kind of got the circular face, which became very iconic. And there were kind of challenges at the time, like looking at the pigeon. At first, I was a bit conflicted, thinking, if we're going to have a face on top with the costume and the Fall Guy's face, like, isn't that giving the player too much to look at? But in the end, we managed to get it to work quite well, and there's kind of a humor to that as well. Yeah, so this was a fun day. One morning, Amy just came into the studio and dropped a bunch of Play-Doh on my desk and was like, let's switch it up a bit. Like, let's try a different medium and see where it goes. So I wouldn't recommend using Play-Doh for sculpting. It's like terrible for sculpting, right? Because it doesn't really stick together properly. But it really forced me to keep the form simple. And there's kind of a nice sense of weight there, which we were able to achieve. Which we wanted to carry through. It's just a little dirty paint over on the right. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, do we still own this proto Fall Guy?
I think it got squashed and put back in the box, sadly, afterwards. So it only exists digitally now.
Survival of the fittest.
It got eliminated. Yeah, and then just some sketches to try and support the animators. When we were designing the Fall Guys, one of the troubles I had was just how do they get back up, right? Like when they've been knocked over. And I remember chatting to our studio art director, Phil, at the time, and it was funny listening to him describe it, just how anyone would really, like at first, they pushed themselves up onto their knees, and I was like, they haven't got any knees, right? Like they barely have any legs. It almost just goes straight to feet. So figuring that out was fun. And I remember chatting to one of our senior animators, and he recommended thinking about them as kind of like a sack of flour, and that kind of clicked a moment in my head. I was like, oh, okay, now I can make sense of how they move, even though they barely have any legs. Yeah, and here just starting to kind of dig into some of the materials. From early on, we knew Fall Guys needed to be a really fun, kind of big, accessible, family-friendly game, so we wanted to make sure it was really vibrant and colorful.
So this slide is basically, it's already very close to what we have in the game.
Yeah, it's pretty close. There's a few little tweaks. One of the small ones, which is super subtle, is just like the eyes. You notice they're kind of centered in the face. We ended up just lowering them a little bit, and something as small as that actually has a huge impact, right? Just because psychologically we, naturally zone in on faces, and it just helped create that naivety and innocence behind the Fall Guy. And yeah, this is pretty much how some of the costumes ended up turning out, I think. Like if you look at the pigeon costume, it's pretty close to what we see in the sketch there. Same for the crazy unicorn fairy and the astronaut and the pirate. So yeah, this it took a bit of back and forth. I think creating customization systems in general is very challenging creatively and technically, and it's kind of going through that collaboration with the artists, designers, and tech artists and code as well. Yeah, and here just really trying to get a sense of the kind of tactile materials Alex was talking about earlier. A lot of inspiration came from vinyl toys. So this sketch here was quite interesting. When we were talking about the tone of the game, we didn't end up taking it this way, but originally we were thinking, like, what if we had some kind of David Attenborough style narration, and you got these Fall Guys, being observed in the wild, interacting with the world in their stupid way. I think there's still some charm to that, but yeah, we ended up just keeping, I guess, the lore a bit more focused around the game show. Yeah, and like the kind of thinking with the world building is like we're trying to build the biggest game show in the world, and so we were asking ourselves what technology would we use to capture this, you know? So we play around with like some of the ideas, like you'd see with having mini Fall Guys filming it, but then we decided Fall Guys only really have one purpose, which is just to compete. You know, it's not like they do it on the side and then have a day job or something like that. And yeah, more exploration. This one here was starting to look into the background, but it was, as much as I enjoyed the direction it was heading in visually, it just started to become too vast. So we just needed to kind of narrow it down and keep the focus on the level and the gameplay, which you can see in the next image here, where we just kind of brought it all a lot closer. I did a bit of fog. Originally, the levels were going to have these different themes, which we've decided to kind of push back. We're actually, you've already seen some of it come through in season 2 with the medieval theming, and future seasons as well will have a different styling. And some ideas which didn't work as well, like for example, Joe Walsh, our lead designer, had this idea of creating levels out of giant pieces of furniture, which was really fun. But in practice, we found it ended up making the Fall Guys just look really small. So we decided not to go that route. And yeah, just like taking the same idea, giving it a different treatment. And yeah, initially we didn't want to go this route, but I think in the future there's probably some possibilities we can look into pushing the direction this way. And yeah, this was one of the early visual targets for Full Mountain, which was one of the first levels we prototyped. And it was a really exciting time because it was around when this level was created. We kind of done our first play tests across the studio wide, and just having like 60 people in the studio playing at the same time, just going crazy, screaming and laughing. We knew we had something good at that point.
I mean, obviously, it looks quite different from the Fall Guys that we have now, but you can already feel the energy and the vibe of the game. I'm so surprised that the very early designs are already so strong that basically we didn't have to make many fundamental changes.
Yeah, I think the essence is still there, right? Originally, our understanding of the space the world existed in was a bit differently. Because initially I was thinking the game exists in an abstract space, almost like a void. So you would have these crazy motion graphics in the background, which was cool and unique, but it wasn't as relatable. I think where we steered it ended up becoming a bit more grounded, but I think people can relate to it better, just through watching game shows and stuff like that. And yeah, just an example of like sketching in 2D and then taking it into 3D as well once that was ready. A lot of the time is with my process, I've been jumping between sketching in Photoshop and then just modeling stuff quickly in Blender, so that you can get the different angles, especially viewing things from a gameplay angle. Sometimes you might design something from an overview, and then once it's actually in game, you realize it causes some different problems. So that's been quite useful.
Um, I guess this is something interesting to just quickly mention here at this point. You are one of those hybrid concept artists, I would say. You're not afraid to use 3D, to use it more than just as a tool for underpainting. Basically, you blend 3D and 2D perfectly into concept art. That's very, I would say, very exact and very describing exactly what's going on, and still having enough creative freedom of expression that would be very hard to achieve solely in 3D. So I guess this
Yeah.
helped us a ton finding the right look and feel for the game.
For sure. And I think it just takes time, and experience to get used to identifying when you should use 2D as a tool or when to use 3D as a tool. So that's the same level again, just in 3D. And it was just quicker. I guess some of the benefits of 3D is being able to reuse assets. So things like just getting a sense of having a ton of Fall Guys in the level. How does it feel in terms of scale? Rather than having to sketch them out every time, especially when I'm working with multiple angles of the same space. So this is quite an interesting image. One of the questions early on we were asking ourselves was, do Fall Guys have their own language? And when you're playing the game, you can kind of hear these muffled sounds, right? Like, because they don't have mouths, but they're making sounds somehow. And I quite like, obviously the game has a very graphic feel to it. So I wanted to play around with, taking that softness of the Fall Guys character design, and then almost applying that to a font with the shape, just keeping it simple, just round brush in Photoshop, right? And then like turning those into kind of onomatopoeic words, and then stacking them in like an Asian style, like you would see with Chinese or Korean characters. And we've got a little bit of this going on some of the billboards in the game. So yeah, it's just one of those kind of spaces I quite enjoy exploring in terms of world building. And the same again here, just looking or thinking really like what would the branding and manufacturing look like in this world where they're kind of constructing these levels.
I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of work and a lot of thinking went into all of this, really. Starting from Big Head to what's now Fall Guys. I think great work so far. I'm really happy how it turned out. Thanks a lot, Dan.
You're welcome. Yeah, I hope it was insightful.
Yeah, it really was. But wait, there's more. We're also here with super talented Ash.
Hi.
How are you doing, Ash?
Hi, I'm good. I am principal concept artist on Fall Guys as well. And I am going to talk through two different types of images that I've done and my process with those. So I thought I would start with the first one being the gauntlet levels, the really big crazy ones, and how I went to concept that.
Before we start, I want to spill a dark secret of yours, if I'm allowed.
Okay. Yes, I think, maybe, depending.
So you do actually have a background in theme park design.
Yes, I do, indeed.
So of course, when you came into the company and I heard that, I was like, yes, this is exactly what we need. And I think once you guys see the designs and how Ash works on them and how her pipeline is, you can truly tell that this is a very unique mixture, but it's super intriguing and interesting to watch how all of this came alive in the levels.
Yeah. I actually went from film to theme park, and then this is actually my first game studio, so I've picked up a lot of stuff along the way. But yeah, I really like environments and set design and that kind of thing. So the first image is kind of what I receive from the level designers. They work out the gameplay, what you're actually doing on the level, and whether that works out and stuff. And then I sort of get handed this block out of, there are wrecking balls over there. This bit's going to be slippy, and I'm told these things, and then I have this screenshot and I put it into Photoshop because I can't do 3D at all. So I got this screenshot in Photoshop and I draw over it. And when drawing over it, I'm thinking about color palettes. So this is before we actually worked out progressive colors. So at the moment, the colors are all over the place. There wasn't any rules for this means, if something does this, it has to be this color, just so that you've got there wasn't a visual language that had been established. It was just more open sky, blue sky. It was just more open at that point where we were still figuring it out. So there's a lot of pink, a lot of colors that are still in Fall Guys, and it was at this point that I'm really figuring out sort of also just like how to make the edges of a level fun. So everything's not just bordered. It was in this level that I added the rainbows that are kind of bordering the slopes that are going up the first part of the course here, and those actually made it into other levels like DoorDash right at the end and Block Party on either side of that floor. So things like that, things like the colours going through the levels to sort of separate one part from the next, and also just adding curves in places and just making the whole thing look fun. So there's another one of this type, another gauntlet level that you can see the sort of the bare bones that I was handed, the 3D blockouts, and then how I go from that to just drawing on top of it and adding colours and points of interest. And a lot of it changes through the design process when we figure out that actually this bit's confusing and we want it to look like something else, and then we go back and forth. For example, the round moving floors, at one point we had kind of a spiral effect on them, but it was making everyone feel really sick with all the floors moving in different directions, and their swirls, kind of like a hypnotic seasickness sort of effect. So those stayed as arrows, and just color separations as well, so that you can like see the difference between something that's that moves or does one thing and like just the floor. So yeah, that's a lot of the level designing, a lot of the designing of the art of the level there goes through a lot of different processes and trial and error through play tests and stuff. Does it actually look that good when you're playing it versus just having a pretty image on Photoshop. So you go back and forth there. The second lot of images I want to talk through here are sort of how I go from like a sketch to a really highly rendered image that you'd see like for the splash image for the for Fall Guys itself, the one that ends up on Steam and PlayStation and all the kind of the shiny ones, because they start off like this. They start off as a sketch where I'm just figuring out the composition, what you're looking at, what's the focal point, and I need to put all of the information I can in this sketch to hand over to a 3D modeler, because we want all the Fall Guys and all of the sets and everything to be on model. This is kind of like a fancy screenshot as best we can make it. So I don't draw these ones from blank canvas to final piece, because that would take ages. So we do a sketch, or I do a sketch, and then I hand it over to Sophia, and then she hands me back a sort of 3D composition of the characters in those poses on a mock-up background, because it turns out some people have the characters and some people have the backgrounds. So you get a screenshot of the characters, you take a screenshot of that and you overlay it onto the backgrounds, the actual 3D models of the backgrounds, and then they take a screenshot, and then I get them both. And then I put the characters, the character screenshot over the levels screenshot, and the final result of that is can be a bit messy, but then I will spend time just kind of fusing the gaps, painting over glitches, any kind of deformations in the characters, because I tend to pose them in ways where there's always something wrong with an elbow or a foot or something. The costume phases through another part, or the head is tilted in such a way that I'm actually breaking the neck of the Fall Guy, and I need to make it look like I'm not. And I'll just do things like fade the background out so that you're focused more on the foreground. Lighten the background so most of the contrasts are in the foreground. Eventually everything becomes Fall Guys.
I guess what I want to add to this, sometimes you read about screenshot artists or something like that, and I don't know. Every time I read that, it kind of like wants to make people to look down on those. But this is so much more than just a screenshot, so to say. This is a very high quality image. You created this image with this preliminary sketch. It might look simple, but the composition is just right.
Yeah, like actual screenshots of Fall Guys exist. They're they're on Google. Like, you can look at it and it will look like a screenshot of a game. This is trying to polish that up a little more so that it looks more flashy. Like, if we had this high poly count in game, I think everything would be really slow. It would be too much for 60 people to all play at once. But yeah, no, like a lot of the stuff that I'm adding in after getting the 3D renders is just like art theory, I guess. You know, if you put a rim light on something, it's gonna make that edge eye-catching. And you know, what edge do you want eye-catching in this image? Do you really want the background to be really vibrant, because that's going to make it a flatter image? You're going to not see the depth. You know, you want some kind of fake haze going through between the Fall Guy in the foreground. Oh, I said it this time. And the background that you're not really focusing on. It's a lot of adding that kind of stuff you pick up on the way from just drawing into this 3D image. And yeah, like if I were to draw this from the initial sketch all the way into a 3D render, it would take a lot of time, and production schedules just don't. There's no need, you know. You've got models. You've got the models of the characters and of the environments, and what would be the point in doing that from nothing, from a blank canvas, all the way to, you know, the end result we have here, because it would take so much longer, and it's just not necessary.
Obviously, you two guys are super duper important. You basically insert the visual magic into Fall Guys. But obviously, I want to say all the artists that are in the team are super amazing. Every 3D artist, every concept artist, every VFX artist, everybody works really hard to kind of like stick to the visual guidelines and to create a world that's appealing to everybody, really. And again, it's Playground Mom approved. We want to aim high standards. We want to aim, I don't know, Pixar quality when we do this game. First of all, thank you too for talking about all this and sharing your magic with the audience. We have a lot planned for you guys. We're working on season 3, season 4. I can't say too much, but we will have completely new mechanics, completely new exciting challenges for you guys. Costumes are going wild. We're having, cooperations with a lot of very important IPs, players, people, whatever it's out there in the world. Again, if I say too much, my boss is going to kill me probably. But I can guarantee you every new season is going to deliver a completely new Fall Guys experience. And new mechanics and everything new, and it's still going to be amazing. Pushing a game out that's so complex and has so many different layers during a pandemic is challenging. I feel very blessed that I'm given the opportunity to work with such talented folks like Dan and Ash and all the other artists in the team, really. But I'm still hungry for more. So if you feel that you like this game, that you like what we're doing, and you can vibe with this, just hit us up. Always looking for fresh talent, for new cool people to join. As I always say during interviews, cool portfolios are important, but the most important fact is don't be a dick. And since we all work on this game all the time, we spend the biggest chunk of the day together working and finding out how we can make this cool. Working with nice folks really helps. And yeah, normally I would do some sort of Q&A right now, but this is all virtual and online. So I guess at this point, thanks again, Dan and Ash. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this. And yeah, see you soon somehow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.